Hello, and welcome again to another episode of the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast with your host, Chris Harris, and myself, John Farquhar. We've got an awesome guest, a repeat guest, a handsome and good-looking guest, Mike McCarron from Left Lane Associates. And guess what? We're going to talk about the hot topic that's going on out there in the trucking industry. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
Michael, good morning.
That doesn't look too handsome to me.
Hey, this is the good-looking old boys club, Mike.
Now, for those of you listening on audio, Michael shaved. He doesn't match John or I.
Yeah.
He's the only clean-haired,
Should have left that
clean-faced
week-long
one here.
scruff there. He went fit in.
Hey, we're talking about Driver Inc. we're just talking about Driver Inc. And Mike, the first thing I'd like to know is, why is this such a problem?
Well, I think it's a problem, Chris, because, the government has basically said that these carriers that are not paying service deductions are breaking the law. They continually acknowledge that they're not paying their taxes. They continually acknowledge that there's not a level playing field, but they continue to make promises that they don't follow up on relative to enforcement. So it's a big topic because trucking is a tough enough business alone, let alone trying to compete with someone. And this is just math I've seen. It's got a 20% kind of advantage in a business where you're making pennies on the dollar. So it's a real hot button. And I've got to tell you, if I was a carrier, I'd be on the mood and that as well. I'd probably be doing different things, but I would not be happy and I'd be fighting alongside them.
Yeah, 20%. Mike, do you have any idea what kind of profit? And I know this is probably a terrible question to ask you, but what is the range of profit that trucking companies are making today, besides the minus numbers?
Well, today they're probably not making a lot of money, especially the small and mid-sized carriers based on the state of affairs. But, I think that top fleets are operating the low 90s operating margin. That's what we used to measure when I was at Yellow Freight. So, 6-7 cents on the dollar. I know that the public companies are trading at, around a 6 cap. So it's really hard to say. I think the small niche guys probably do a little bit better. But, the bottom line, Chris, is the margins are so small. And, one of the problems with trucking is it takes very little to go wrong. So you take a winter, for example, where you need 15 days of snow. What happens? So it's a very, very fine line of things that you can't control.
Yeah, no. And if you, as you said, you add one of your biggest costs are your driver costs. And if you have an advantage of about 20% because you're using the Driver Inc. model, that significantly adds to the bottom line.
Well, significantly adds to the bottom line. I would suggest they're probably using it there. And what I was seeing in the open market and the spot market, it's not going to the bottom line, it's going to the top line. Meaning, when, you get someone hauling freight out of Minneapolis for 4,000, driver carriers quoting, they're smart, they're quoting 39. But they're not.
Yeah.
Those savings I don't think are going to their bottom line past the customers, which is why you have such a spread between the spot market rates and the contract rates right now. The driver carriers aren't very diligent for surcharges. Their rates are all in. And as I said, I think that this competitive advantage is not going to the bottom line. It's really being given to the customer.
So if Driver Inc., and again, maybe I should ask you a question that you probably don't know the answer to. If it's such a problem, why hasn't the government moved forward and taken some substantial steps to eradicate it?
Well, I think that's the $1 million question. So my take, talking to people that are maybe outside trucking, is you've got a couple of things. You've got, number one, you've got a situation where as much as our $1 billion a year, and that would be the estimated, kind of tax dollars aren't being paid. It's really a drop in the bucket relative to the billions and billions and billions of dollars that go into uncollected. I don't have the exact stats, but there was a report from like going back 4 or 5 years ago where there's 23, 24, $25 billion here not being collected already. I read somewhere recently that they believe there's about $27 billion in eligible COVID payments that have to be paid. So I think you've got a situation where CRA is a mess. They're on strike right now. They're a mess and they're not collecting. I think you've got a situation where I'm not sure how high it is on the politician's agenda. You've got the South Asian vote, which is very much a driver Inc. It's very much a South Asian business model. It's very liberal. You've got a vote, an election coming up in 18 months. My suggestion will probably be a little bit sooner than that. You've got, vote Rich Brampton, quite a large South Asian lobby. I believe there's about 18 MPs. So I just think the government is paying us lip service, and they just don't have the bandwidth to enforce it. And it really is $1 billion is a lot of money, guys. But it's a drop in the bucket. ERA fast. And I went through it. I lived through it through a situation where I sold a business, and it really made me realize that it's one thing to say we're going to shut you down, but then you've got to go into the CRA court system. It's going to take years and years and years, and that's what made me realize that it's time to acknowledge that this is probably not going away. I'm not saying I agree with it at all. I'm just saying it's probably not going due to a lot of factors that are much bigger than the trucking lobby and industry.
I know I don't agree with the Driver Inc. model. All three of us sitting here, we're all self-employed. And if you use the Driver Inc. model, and if the carrier doesn't issue a T4A slip, that means the driver gets to have all the same tax deductions that the three of us have who are self-employed, who took a risk, can lose money, can go bankrupt. But, why should they get the same tax advantages that we have accepted because of a risk?
I think a lot of drivers get duped because it surely is not good for drivers. There's no benefit.
No.
They make less money. They're not protected. But I certainly know that in that culture, self-employment is very important. It's very, very important. And that's one of the other challenges, Chris, is this whole gig economy. Like, this is not just a trucking problem. Every friend I have is dealing with the same thing. I believe the gig worker is the worker of the future. And the bottom line is there's no workers. They're going to get what they want. And I think the government is going to have to do something, because you can't continue to have this tax leak and leading so much debt. And I was blown away when I saw the amount of tax dollars that don't collect it every year. It's staggering. You think it's complete debt just to collect its own.
Yeah, my wife is in the dental hygienist world, and right now dental offices are having a hard time because if you work through an agency as a dental hygienist being self-employed, you can make $50 an hour. Well, that's not what they're being paid in the dental practice. Therefore, they don't want to work directly for a dentist, and I suspect it's somewhat the same here in trucking, that it's part of the gig economy. And it's not just our South Asian friends. It's many. I use the dental hygiene as an example, and that's a wide culture mix.
Right. Yeah. I think I have to be careful with South Asia. That's probably trucking, but certainly that's very much an Eastern European, basically that immigrated to Canada. So, we talk about South Asians because, they're particularly focused on transportation, but the immigration in general, these people don't want T4. And there's so many around it. I know there are carriers that hide behind agencies, carriers that are doing sort of these, kind of rate owner operator models. There's a lot more carriers doing things. And, and I think what we're seeing as well is a lot of carriers are saying, they believe it's illegal. I think they believe it's illegal. They don't want to cross a line, meaning they don't want to start paying drivers independent contractors. So they're just getting out. I'm for more deals we just did left lane. As the owner said, I just can't compete with this. I'm sick of it. I'm tired. And I mean, when it's a realistic time to get out. And you'll see as these legacy carriers are getting out, the proportion of driver rank or independent contractor drivers relative to the rest of the business is just getting larger as for most.
Yeah. Well, let's dive in here and analyze this just a little bit here. I think we need to let everybody know what we know. So let's kind of start with a benefit of being in a driver Inc. model, right? So from a driver perspective, one of the things is right off the bat, the motor carrier is not taking source deductions. They're not taking your income tax, whether it be provincial and federal. They're not taking EI, employment insurance. They're not taking CPP from you. And therefore, at the same time, that means the motor carrier is not providing their share of EI and CPP that need to be topped up, right? So to the driver's perspective, it's like, I'm making more money now, which is to them is like, hey, I want that now. I want that. So is there any other benefits that other than those that I just kind of pointed out that would be beneficial? And then we'll get into the cons of it here.
Well, once again, I don't know how beneficial those are because of what's lost. If you can do those things against workers' compensation, unemployment, Canada Pension, DPP, workman's comp, vacation benefits. I don't think there is and once again, I have to be careful. I don't have to be dangerous. I certainly that people there's no one benefits through this. And, the one thing about benefits, the thing that bothers me probably the most about all this, even tax situation, is the lack of safety with a lot of these companies. That's another negative. But I don't know, John, if there actually is any benefits other than benefits to the company, because you'll find now during COVID, there were so many non-employee fleets started and granted. It tells me they're also paying all their employees in the offices, independent contractors as well. Yep.
Yeah, it's more than just driver. It's in other industries as well. I've been informed on by good sources. It's in all kinds of various different industries and whatnot. But you're right, that self-employed model is very important to a lot of these people. The unfortunate aspect is they're not realizing what comes with it. And I think one of the real big concerns is we talk about, and we use the acronym CPP. And I want to make it very clear on this show here what CPP stands for, because a lot of drivers do not know that CPP stands for the Canada Pension Plan. And that's your retirement. When you turn 60, 65, 70, and the guy with the whitest beard on this view right now is probably either already collecting or going to be collecting it. But that's a big thing. If you pay into it, the more you pay into it, the more you get out of it. So if you're not paying into it and your employer is not paying their share, their contribution into it, when it comes time, I'm sorry, you're going to have to keep working. So this is why you see these guys that are in their 70s and pushing beyond still driving truck because they never paid into the program and never put money away to invest properly so that they could properly retire.
Yeah, I mean, John, I agree with you. The CPP is a huge thing that they're missing out on. Now, if I was self-employed and putting into RSPs or other investments, I could cover that up and be in good shape when I retire. The problem is when I had kids, I was living paycheck to paycheck and the whole paycheck would be spent. And I didn't have, and when I was in my 20s and 30s, I didn't have money to invest. So yeah, I'm very thankful CPP got me through COVID. Let me tell you.
Well, it's that catch-22, right? Because the sad part is even when I was younger and working my butt off, it's like, but they're taking CPP. What the hell is this for? I don't need this. I need the money right now. But now, as in my 50s here now, and I go to the bank and I sit with my financial representative and we look at the portfolio and he's going, hey, your CPP is looking pretty good. You're going to get a good chunk of change out of that because you paid into it properly as you should have, and your employers help support that as well. Because not all of us are smart enough to put away investments.
Well, how many people in Canada with paycheck to paycheck? I always suggest you drive these huge. They're driving their own different, but I think part of the problem is they're getting duped. Let's call a spade a spade. There's a lot of really good professional driver carriers. It's been going on for 15, 20 years. They're not dirt bags. You talk to them and they found a loophole that the government's yet to close. But on the smaller side, there's still a lot of seedy shit going on with big driving schools, training guys. You know what really absolutely to me says it all? I think I mentioned to you this the last time. A buddy of mine from University of a pretty large warehouse. And they actually have to hire someone to shut trucks into the dock because the line haul driver who's driving 2,700 miles at load to California. Yeah. Now, if I can't there you go. That's why we're not live right there. And if a guy can't drive a truck into a yard, how is he going to navigate he's got to drive 2,700 miles. How many situations is he going to run into or she's going to run into, like driving through Kitchener right now? And so I think the drivers get duped. They get this, dangle this dream of self-employment. You brag to your self-employment. And I've yet to see one benefit of drivers, but saying that a lot of these larger fleets are very professionalized now because they've been around for 20 years and they know what they're doing and they're getting significant market share. They're getting Fortune 500 companies because the one thing I've learned is customers don't care how you pay your drivers. So one thing that I think a lot of the legacy carriers were banking on is that loyal customers would refute using people that had an unfair advantage. That's not the case.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? The aspect of that, that glory of owning my own operation, whether it be as a single individual, an owner operator, is great. And I've been an entrepreneur for many times. I've worked as a company guy many times as well. But if the biggest thing I could tell anybody is do your research. Because right now, the trucking industry is probably not the best place to be jumping in as an entrepreneur at this time. As you mentioned earlier on, spot rates, market rates are not where they need to be. The cost of fuel's through the roof, insurance is through the roof, truck payments, the price of equipment is through the roof. Now is not the time to be that guy when you do not have any business savvy sense. Learn it. Stay as a driver, work for a good company and realize how much money you can make. The good companies will show you how to be a good business operator and not dupe you, as you say, because that is a problem.
I think the one thing to keep in mind, John, though, is that these people are self-employed. They don't have to take the risk. They're not, like owner operators. They're not the one paying for the trucks. They're not paying for the insurance. They're doing none of that. Their only risk is, the risking great job benefits and killing themselves or some of the road because they don't have enough training. They're not taking a risk. To your point, we all took a risk. I took a risk as a kid. I don't know how we did it. Do it, and you reap the benefits. You cannot live in this country without contributing to paying for the roads and paying for the infrastructure, the hospitals. And it just drives me nuts. But there just comes a point where you say, at some point in time as an industry, you have to read the tea leaves and say, as a trucking entrepreneur, I need to start thinking differently. And I need to start my business a little bit differently because my suggestion is that it's just not going anywhere. I don't know how they basically shut such a 10-headed monster down right now. And the thing about it too is that, so think how important trucking is to this economy. Imagine if you could pull 60,000 drivers, which you could never do, but just think if the legacy carriers got their utopia. Put our country out of business. So you would lose all your competitiveness. So, all these things are just paid to a lot of lip service. Every single, this is Seamus O'Regan and my buddy, he comes up, this big announcement, ba 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 ba. You'll be in the budget. Budget comes, nothing.
Yeah, and the other part of this whole thing is it's not just a Canadian problem.
No.
The U.S. is fighting the same thing or a similar.
Problem in California. In fact, it's interesting. I talked to a friend of mine in California, and you know what a lot of these drivers are doing to complicate things is they're working a couple Uber gigs and outside, and they're doing other gig economy jobs to create other sources of income. Once again, just another complication for CRA and to tie this thing up if they ever do decide to enforce.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And really, I'm leaning with you, Mike, that they don't have the stomach to enforce it. Back 30 years ago when I was with TNT, our owner-operators paid most of their drivers what we would say cash. I mean, I know it wasn't cash, it was a check, but it was going to their personal name. They didn't know the SIN number of that driver. Therefore, it was never getting declared. And that was 30 or 40 years ago. This was going on in trucking, and it was very predominant then. It's changed from that to the Driver Inc. model, but it's a 40, 50-year-old problem that the government has never decided was important enough. And it's not just trucking, as you said. I mean, carpenters and all kinds of people. I mentioned dental. It seems like everybody wants the gig economy. Everybody wants to be self-employed.
It's just early immigration. These whatever country they're coming from, they're chasing this dream, this Canadian dream, and that starts with self-employment without the risk, but also without the benefits. So I feel bad for workers somewhat, but to your point, Chris and John, kind of the horses out of the barn now. I think if you really read closely, you'll realize that I encourage the legacy carriers to try and level the playing field. I just wish the government would get off their ass and they would either enforce or say, go do it. Because I know if I own a trucking company, I'd be doing it all day. There's no way.
So that brings up the perfect segue that I wanted to bring up was, well, if we can't beat them, what do we do to join them?
Well, I think it's, there comes a point where you say, either I have to join them or I have to get out. Because I would suggest, once again, you're going to have trouble filling your trucks, the seats your truck if you don't do this. So there's several things that can be done. First of all, the penalties itself. Look at the fine that Seamus Reagan $250,000 fine, regardless of the size of your trucking company. So if you're a 4,000 feet operator and they're out there, or one truck, you get this fine. So that's problem number one. Number two is enforcement. You talk about why we do. At a $250,000 fine, do the math on, say a truck doing $200,000 in revenue a year. So based on the $20,000 formula, that means you're saving $40,000. So what that tells me, as long as you have more than 6 trucks doing it, you can't lose.
Yeah.
So, there's the opportunity to buy, Driver Inc. fleet and keep it separate. We've got people doing that. The one thing that I find probably the most ironic about all this, and it really is ironic, maybe a bit of hypocrisy, frankly, is that all these carriers trying to shut down Driver Inc. are absolutely making a fortunes on the back of Driver Inc. and their freight brokerage divisions.
Big time. Huge.
A single carrier, and I'm not going to name names. I'm talking 100 million. Like you're talking the biggest brokers in this country.
Yep.
The biggest brokers, bar a couple, are divisions of top 100 carriers.
Yep. Agree.
Non-driver, you cannot make money in brokers without using driver carriers. They all use them. And the part about it is they've actually made a lot of money in the enterprise value because they're growing a non-asset segment. So you can say what you want, but there's no. Now, this has served a large fleet, but the smart ones have also benefited from.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, I can share something. I won't say where I got it from, but I got it on good authority. So you talk about the $250,000 fine. The unfortunate aspect, that is only in the worst case scenario, and that will only be after it goes to court. I have been informed by the enforcers that there will be no fine in the beginning. If they come in, find out you're doing a Driver Inc. program, what they're going to do is they're going to lay you some citations, non-monetary citations to say, you need to stop and this is what you need to do. And if they come back in 30 days and you're still doing it, well, then they will lay a citation of $10,000 and they'll give you a court date. And then we'll go to court and we'll start to play around. It's only then if you continue to not do anything about it that you could see the $250,000 fine. So as you say, Mike, right off the bat, it's like, even for a small carrier, it's like, okay, I've been given the warning shot. I need to change. Maybe I'll change. But for the big guy, it's like, yeah, big deal. $250,000. You know, it cost me more than that to support the CPP EI program and the WSIP. So it's of no sense to me. It's cheaper to pay the fine.
And my point too is, so look at my situation. So I had a tax situation, a 7-figure tax problem based on signing a form incorrectly. No interpretation, no benefit from me. It was a no-brainer, 11 years and 3 or 4 court cases. So, you know, the problem you're going to have with, they're all member companies. Cut down one fleet. Do you think these guys, these drivers, or I shouldn't say guys, the men and women driving the trucks are suddenly going to run out and get a regular job with basic T4? No, they're going to go on their Driver Inc. thing. And by the time you shut the fleet down, 25 are going to start, because you pretty much worked an assumption that no one is starting a trucking company today in this country that's paying source deductions, period.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of companies out there. You know, I've had the call it a privilege, I guess, to see these operations and whatnot, and they're operating totally illegally, where they have multiple numbered companies because, you know, their operating authority is under one company, equipment is under another company, and then they lease it too. And we had legacy carriers that do the same thing, right? It's a legal tax program. It's for proper deductions and all that to manage your risk, because the last thing you want to have happen is, you know, one company takes everything down. So you break it up in pieces. Well, a lot of guys have companies that do nothing but the payroll. You know, so it's like, I'm leasing my drivers to this company to operate. So we pay that company and then all the drivers are paid through that. You shut down that company, it's like you said, no problem. I'll just start another one, put all the drivers onto that one.
There's no liability. They have, it's just, as I said, it's like, I think a lot of this is the ineptitude of CRA. I think a lot of it is the fact that you're just a drop in the bucket relative to tax arrears. But I really think that they need this for immigration, because they'll go to other countries. I think that ultimately you need immigrant. You know, we're short workers today. Imagine pulling the economy workers out. It would be impossible. You shut down the economy. It's all these realities. And once again, it's so important to understand that. I don't agree with this, but there comes a point where you read the tea leaves, you have to say, it logistically cannot go away.
Now, Mike, as we get to the point where we got to wrap this up, how about I ask you a real direct question? You've already answered this one, but a real direct question to end this interview. Is Driver Inc. going away today?
No, absolutely not.
Is it go?
Yes. Is it going away someday? No. Am I not saying that the odd $250,000 fine might not be issued? Am I not saying there'll be some sort of, you know, appearance of enforcement? Nothing that I look at, nothing that there's a lot of talk amongst the legacy peers, nothing they see. And you'd be amazed at how many carriers are quietly already have independent contractor programs at their fleet, because it's the only way they can fill a seat. It's just a matter now of, do I get out or do I conform?
And the one thought I hadn't thought of that you mentioned was the carriers who all have broker divisions. And of course, the broker divisions are all using Driver Inc., you know, even if the carrier themselves is not.
Percent they are. No, it's like you cannot literally. I'm not like John. I'm not going to mention carriers. We got a carrier friend of ours from out west. He was a real anti-Driver Inc. guy. He built the broker's business. It's incredible what he's built, but it's got to be done. And see, so you've got the situation that's evolving where the other thing that's really evolving is third parties, because they're the ones that use the broker. So the drive rate, they might not be prominent, a lot of these small guys with customers, but they are prominent with brokers. So to your point, Chris, there's just too many things pointing to something that I just logically don't see ever being shut out.
Well, I was going to say, with the volume of drivers, as you said, out there that are in the driver rank model, there's no way that a logistics operation could not work without them. You just wouldn't find enough regular carriers or legacy carriers that could handle the freight.
Well, the rates are too high, and the challenge is that. See what's happened in this market is that. So two things are driving the spot market. One, of course, is driver and fleets that will run for cheaper. But the other thing is they also don't have a 90% fuel surcharge on. And so that's really, that old school fuel surcharge system has really, I think, bitten a lot of carriers hard, because it's made for, in the last year, the greatest rate disparity ever between whatever called spot market and contract rates. I know when I owned MSF as a broker, you could never compete a large carrier direct. Well, guess what? You can today, because you have in some lanes a difference of 80, 90%. And a lot of that's just in fuel surcharge, because driver and carriers don't charge fuel surcharge. It's all, here's rated flavor today. I went vanilla today. I went chocolate today. It's a different rate every day, but if you can learn to manage that, they can truck.
Yeah, and that's a great spot to end it up. Mr. Mike McCarron from Left Lane Associates, longtime industry veteran. Although you're younger than us, Mike. When I say, I'm going to be careful when I say industry veteran.
63.
I got many years on you, Mike, but anyways.
I'm just under you.
Thanks, Mike, for coming on. You are always invited.
Thank you.
And once again, and we were talking about driver this week. Thanks, Mike.